There's only one thing I miss more than bread, and if there's one thing that can make me go to the dark side, it's pizza. Sure, pizza is just bread with sauce and cheese, but it's the sum of the parts. It's hard to explain. And so today starts my quest. But first, we must establish a baseline.
A baseline crust built on yeast, almond flour, coconut flour, wheat gluten, lots of wheat gluten, and continued failure. Rather than bore you with the shortcomings, simply know that this method originates after dozens upon dozens of trial and error. Each attempt with ever so slight tweaks aimed at a crust that is, well, crusty. Wet doughs, dry doughs, slam doughs, and everything in between. All of which, fortunately, have led to incredibly deliciously good pizza. Although the crust is only a part of the holy trinity of bread, sauce, and cheese, it is the base, the foundation, and thus his closest attempt to low-carb pizza crust perfection. Like most amazing things, it begins with the smallest of details. In a smaller container, he adds 5 grams of regular sugar. Yes, the enemy. To this, he adds warm water, and using the Jason method, ensures the sugar dissolves completely. Once the water is within 105 and 110 degrees American, he adds 1 gram of instant yeast and stirs to ensure they eat their dinner. Then, in a large bowl, he adds 85 grams of almond flour, 15 grams of coconut flour, and 45 grams of wheat gluten. Yes, wheat gluten, so if you're allergic to wheat or gluten, you can only watch and salivate. Sorry. 4 grams of salt, and using an appropriately sized whisk, shakes things up a bit. Then, it's time for soap making ingredients. Oil of the olives and OH2, or H2O, better known as water. Just make sure to account for the water in the yeast. In total, you need 80 grams, or 80 milliliters. The time for physical exertion has arrived. Begin mixing and attempt not to spill any. These measurements are precise for a reason. Once well incorporated, it's time to add the living to the dead. If your yeast has not firmed, it means they are dead. So, you must try again. However, these little ones are alive. He mixes them in and once decently combined, it's time for a large flat surface. Using a plastic scraper of benches, he removes the dough from the bowl, crumbly as it may be. Then, using his dirty hands, begins to play with his food. He rolls it back and forth as if it were Play-Doh. Incredibly violent as he is, he slams the dough to show it who's boss, also to test its development. By this point, he has kneaded the dough for about 15 or 20 minutes, and it is as smooth as it will get. In his interpretation of pinching the dough, he rolls it into a ball and rubs oil in a container like a bear in a honey jar. He drops his hopes and dreams into the container, loosely covers it, and takes it to meet its friends in the hot box. He leaves the oven off, but to maintain warmness, he ignites the light, sets a timer for an hour, and cleans. Because ants. As a reminder for others of the fire hazard, he leaves the name of his spaceship, All-Star 9. An hour later, he removes the dough from the oven. He places it in the fridge overnight to allow for maximum gluten development. The next day, he removes the dough from the fridge, but he must allow it to warm to room temperature. He places it into a pan of sorts and labels them so he knows which is his superstar. He loosely covers it with his enemy, wrapper the saran, and sets it aside for 2 hours to warm to room temperature. It's now time for the dough to achieve its final form. Once on the board, he smooshes it to test its gluten development. The springiness and return to form shows rather good gluten goodness. In footage of test subject 004, we can see what the gluten actually does. Unfortunately, subject 004 was terminated. In his excitement for the dough, he begins to vocalize.
When the moon hits your eyes like a big pizza pie, that's summer.
Unfortunately, he drops the dough. Boop. However, there's nothing little floor spice doesn't improve. He brushes it off and decides to switch to the parchment paper method. Nestled between 2 sheets, he uses a rolling pin to push the dough from the middle out. This yields a large amoeba-like shape. His inability to shape dough does not prevent him from progress. He flips it onto a heavily used pizza pan that has large holes for airflow. Behaving like the Earth Mother, he begins to form a ridge for the outer crust. Then, for completion of the trinity, he adds homemade pizza sauce onto the dough and spreads it around. Not too much, not too little. He does the same with low moisture mozzarella, and into a 450-degree oven, it goes for at least 7 minutes. After that time, he begins to closely monitor his pizza. Although it looks like a poorly made frozen pizza, it will in fact improve. Once the metamorphosis has occurred and the pizza has achieved peak doneness, it is removed and set aside to cool. After passing the stage of guava lava hot, he slices the pie into quarters. Inspection of the crust reveals that it has an appropriate level of crispiness to it. Then it's time for further testing. When the crust is pulled apart,
Pulls apart nicely.
it pulls apart like pizza should. As far as taste, he appears to be incapable of stopping.
Good though, but I think we found the upper bound of the amount of wheat gluten that we want to use.
And so we have reached peak starchiness, and the flavor
Very good.
is very good. And so test number 6 of batch 348 is our front runner in our quest for the perfect low-carb and keto-friendly pizza. Make sure to subscribe to follow Dennis on his quest for the perfect pizza, and if you want to kick diabetes in the face, make sure to watch one of these other videos. Until then, eat well.